We want to think bigger than ourselves. We come in and today we worship. And we worship a God who loves the entirety of the world and is reaching out in light. Bless you. Yeah. So today we're going to continue in the journey of how light plays out in Scripture and surrounds the birth of Christ. This morning we're going to be a couple places, but mostly in Matthew chapter 2. Now, we've looked at how light played out for the shepherds, that the shepherds were in the fields and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And what we see is, I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like it was a foot race back into Bethlehem to find this child that the angels were speaking of. We see that a couple of shepherd boys were some of the first to get the message that the light of the world has come, and somehow the glory was shining around them. And so they're the ones who were some of the quickest to get to Jesus. In Matthew chapter 2, we're going to look at the Magi's journey. And we're also going to see light. The shepherd's journey seemed relatively short, and they were able to make it to Jesus in a quick manner. And what we know of this story as we look at it is the Magi probably were not there at the same time as the shepherds, because they had a longer journey. And so we're going to look at the longer journey of the Magi, and we'll be in Matthew chapter 2. And there are a couple of key people in here that we're going to be looking at. What we know about the Magi is kind of general, but we know they came from a distance. And we know this because it's not even mentioned the location, it's just like the far east is what we see. It's just east. They had a trip, and we're projecting it could have taken them a couple of years, and we know this by Herod's response, that he was trying to gauge when they saw the star for the light of the Messiah. So we're going to read a little bit. We're going to kind of break it down, and we're going to keep going, and we're going to watch how light plays out in this part of the story. In Matthew chapter 2, it says in verse 1, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. Now we're going to pause right there, and we're just going to get in it. We're going to be in it with them. We see a couple of characters. One is King Herod, and we're going to talk about him a little bit. And then we also see the Magi, and of course we don't really know the number. We've created tradition on there's 3 gifts. We say 3 Magi. That's not the important part, so we're going to dig into what is important. One, we have the king of Judea, and his name is Herod, and was also called Herod the Great, which is interesting because although he was a pretty strong political power in Judea, had some success in how he politicked, he actually was not a great person. What we see is Herod was kind of a violent and angry man. Then in opposition, we see these foreigners, and they are traveling, and they're traveling with a purpose. And they may have already been pretty far in the journey, we don't know, but they are headed toward something. And my thoughts are, as I was preparing, it's interesting to see the shepherd's journey is pretty quick. They get to Jesus quick. And what I learned in Scripture in this story is there are others being drawn to Jesus and their journey is longer. That there are others who are being pulled in, but it's going to take them longer to get to Jesus. So I started trying to dissect their journey, and maybe we could come up with where they came from and how long was the journey and some of the trouble spots they went through, but they persevered and they made it. And then I realized that we don't really know a whole lot. We're not going to get very far, except to know their journey was clearly longer than the shepherds. That their journey would have taken preparation and time, and that their journey was targeted. They were looking for the King of the Jews. So now, why is it that we're going to read? It says in verse 3, when King Herod heard this, that they were looking for the King of the Jews, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Now, I get why Herod is disturbed. It makes sense, especially if you know the storyline of Herod. Herod does not want to let go of his reign. Kings tend to do that. So I get, Herod probably would be disturbed that foreigners come in, they walk in and they pronounce to king, we're looking for the King of the Jews. And they get before Herod and it's like, no, it's not you, but we are looking for a king. Yeah, it might be disturbing for Herod. But why all of Jerusalem? We're looking for the Messiah to come. This should be great news. Sometimes in the midst of what God is doing, it doesn't always make sense to us, and we haven't got the full picture yet. Also, my guess, this is not academic research, it's my guess, is that when King Herod is upset, that the rest of the surrounding area is also on edge. That if the king ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And in fact, we know that Herod was a violent person, that he holds tight to his reign at all cost, at the cost of an uncle, mother-in-law, father-in-law, a wife, 3 of his sons, a barber. I don't know what happened there, but that was bad news. He clearly has the authority to kill off those that might be in competition with him or just give him a bad haircut. That if Herod is upset, that is going to cause problems for Jerusalem. And so Herod is going to react, and we're going to take a look at what this earthly king does when he hears that the anointed one is here. When he hears there is a king of the Jews, he's not super fond of it. In verse 4, so he was disturbed, all of Jerusalem with him. And when he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least of the rulers among Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So here's Herod's big plan. Herod clearly rules over the people. And now he hears there may be a challenge to his reign, and so he gathers up those that would have the scriptural understanding, those that might know what the key is, and he's going to hit them up for some knowledge. He's going to ask them where it is that this child or this Messiah is to come. And so he gets a location, which is interesting. And then we're going to see, obviously, some of what he does is a little scrupulous and for his own benefit. But he's asking people who know the storyline of God, Yahweh, and Israel. And he inquires without telling them why. and he wants to know about this Messiah. Now, we're going to step back. We're going to pause right there. We have one king looking for another king. We have an earthly king who doesn't realize it, but is hearing news of the King of all kings. And then we have the people of Israel who are giving him some information. Now, the people of Israel, at one point, were asking for a king. At one point, they decided, I think it'd be best if we had a king over us like the other nations. And so in 1 Samuel chapter 8, we see the people of God long ago say, we want a king. Now, just to be clear, Herod the Great was their king over proximity, but not the one that they would have put in as king. But it's in place long before that the people of Israel decided a king would be great. So in chapter 8 of 1 Samuel, Samuel's growing older, and his kids, who are probably going to take over this leadership role that Samuel has. Samuel has been understood to be a prophet who hears from God, and Israel yields to him. They ask of him. Samuel has direction from the Lord that he gives. But his kids, they're stinkers, and nobody wants them to follow their dad. And so they're in this spot, and Israel comes up with this great plan. And in verse 4 of chapter 8 in 1 Samuel, here's what happens. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, you are old. That had to have hurt a little bit, but I think he got over it. You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said that, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. So Israel's great idea is we would like a king. Now God's going to have some conversation with Samuel and say, you need to warn them what they're asking for. And so he does. If we drop down to verse 10, Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. And he said, this is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and he will make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials and attendants, your male and female servants, and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. All right, so if you want a king, here's how it plays out. This is what it looks like to not allow God to be king, but to expect that a human leader is going to be ruling over you and it's going to go well. And it's laid out. None of that sounds like a great sales pitch for anybody. And yet, it's interesting, Israel's response. God had actually told them, it's not going to go well for you. They just take what's yours, and they will use it for their own benefit. They'll send your sons out in front of his chariots. And here's Israel's response in verse 19. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. Nope, they said, we want a king over us, and then we will be like all other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. They just said the reverse of what God said. God said he's just going to take stuff from you, and they said, no, we want a king, because he's going to actually go out and defend us. He'll go in front of us. It's as if they see that this human figure is going to be this righteous shield, and they're going to be taken care of. And God had warned them that's not really how that plays out. So we fast forward, and you have the people of God who are under the reign of a king, and we see it play out all through history exactly as God said. And so we have the Magi, right? They're coming with a purpose. They're actually going to be passing through King Herod in order to get to Jesus. That their goal is, we want to see the true King of Kings. It's interesting that in 1 Samuel, we see the people want a king who is willing to lay down his life for his people. And now the Magi are onto something and may not even realize how much they are onto, because they're going to be approaching the King of Kings, who is willing to lay down his life for his people. It's almost as if God said, but you're denying me as your king. And they said, nope, this is what we want. And God said, that is so secondary. It's so much less than what you can get if you follow me. And then we see Christ appear, and it's almost as if it comes for full circle, and God says, I am the one who is your true king. So we see the Magi, they're going to continue, but it's interesting the description we get when we're in Matthew. King Herod says, hey, I want to know about where this thing is happening. And the chief priests, the teachers of the law, they recite a passage in Micah that says, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people. They give a description of a ruler who's also a shepherd. If you look at Herod, he is so far from that. If you look at what the world has offered, it is so far from the reign of the King who has created us, designed us, and knows what we need. Because you know what shepherds do? He's a ruler. He is the ruler. But you know what shepherds do? They actually go out before their flock. I think that's what they were asking for. Shepherds, a good shepherd, will fight off the dangers and will protect the flock. A ruler who is a good shepherd is going to provide all that we need and make sure we have on the daily all we need to keep going. And in fact, Scripture also tells us, Jesus says, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. They've yet to experience a king who could figure that out until the light of the world came. Now, their journey is actually going to go straight through Herod and to the King of Kings, which is kind of insulting, right? Hey, we want to see something awesome. And Herod's like, sweet, come on in. And then they keep going. Have you ever done that? Where somebody's looking at you with great excitement, and they maybe even wave, and you can't place the face, and so you panic for a minute. You're like, oh no. But they're so excited, you're like, hey, and then they keep going, and you realize there were people behind you that they were excited to see. You're either laughing at me or you've done it. I've done it. The Magi are like, nice to see you, Herod, and they head toward the important thing. Now, remember, they're going to be bringing gifts for a king, and we have no record of whether or not they did give Herod anything. It's typically customary to do that. But what we do know is they saved some stuff. There are things he did not get. So, they call him Herod the Great. I just think he's Herod the Lazy. Bethlehem's less than 6 miles from where he's at, and he sends other people. If you're so great, you really want to know, well, get off your throne. Go figure it out. But of course he doesn't, because he doesn't actually want to go and worship the king. Matthew chapter 2 in verse 7, we're going to see a little bit more how this plays out. When Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared, he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go, search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, just report back to me, and then I too will be able to worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose ahead of them until it stopped over the place. Excuse me, I did not read that right. They went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Remember, the long journey, we don't know, but just human nature, we understand there's difficulties. If I can get to the refrigerator quicker, it's an instant gratification. If I have to get in my car and drive to the store and come home and make the thing, it's probably not happening. But if I were to do that, there are challenges along the way before I get to the good stuff. So we see a couple things in the account of Christ's birth. We see there are some that are just already ready, and they're there. And then we see there are some that their journey just took a little bit longer. But they're committed. They have a goal. They've held aside some gifts. They've stayed determined. They even bypassed, I would say, at least the one king, probably kings, because they're looking for the King of Kings. It's in deep contrast to Herod the Great, who's like, yeah, go find him, let me know. And then we know how this goes. Herod just goes and sends somebody else out to do what he is not going to do himself. But what's interesting is they followed a light that brings them straight to, probably not the manger, but to the Christ child. Now, here's what we know about Magi. Magi would have been more scholarly, learned. Magi probably had a little bit of mix of, it was understanding of religion, understanding of history and how that's playing out, and understanding of the cosmic or the stars or the things that seem greater than we are. They would have understood the prophetic word, or they wouldn't have even known how to start the journey or known that the King of the Jews was coming. And so they had some partial knowledge, if nothing else. And they also would have been people who are watching the big picture. And they're actually looking to the heavens for things that are going to change the earth. That they're trying to figure out and make sense of the things that are greater than them, but will have a huge impact on them. And so they've studied, and what they see is there's this unique light that appears. It wasn't, and then it was. And that light was something so great that they packed up things, they decided to take the long journey, and they're going to head that way. They're going to find this child. I don't know if they knew it was a child, but they're going to find the King of the Jews. This unique light is going to light their path, and it will direct them. I am convinced they're really smart people, because I can't even figure out the stars. People are like, look, it's Orion's belt. And I'll look in that general direction and go, wow, I see nothing. I have no idea. Every now and then I'm like, it's the Little Dipper, and I'll point, and somebody will take me by the shoulders, turn me 180, and say, it's over there. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I saw it's like 4 with the little handle. So how these magi are able to interpret the stars, I don't understand, but it is guiding them exactly. And then some have said, yeah, but I mean, really, Krisi, a star? Yeah, why not? Was it really that unique? It had to have been. Psalm 147 tells us that God determines the number of stars and he calls them by name. That he used a light that was bigger than us in order to guide the Magi to the Messiah. They journeyed a long way, much further than the shepherds would have had to. They journeyed past a reigning monster, and they actually went to the king. Now, we're going to look briefly. You know they held back gifts. I've said it. And a lot of us know there were 3 gifts. That's why we say 3 magi. But here's their response. They were overjoyed when they found the child. It was the culmination of their journey, and it was what they were waiting for. I can't imagine it was what they expected, but what they knew is all of the signs pointed to Jesus. And so when they got there, this is their response in verse 11. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. So they got to Jesus, and the first thing they did was worship. Before they gave anything, before they did anything else, they came before the King of all kings, and they worshiped him for who he was. He was the one that the stars were speaking of that would change the world. And so they worshiped him because of who he is. Because he has decidedly come into our dark world. In fact, you know, the dark world is trying to hide Jesus. That he starts out life in a stable. That there's no great big production of the Messiah's here. And yet he is here. And the light of the world guided these magi from the far east. Now we know their gifts. There's a silly meme going around. I'm sure it's 20 years old, but it still made me laugh. First part of it has the 3 that we consider the 3 wise men. And it says, we'll give him gold and frankincense. But wait, there's myrrh. Yeah, I know. It's great. Do you know what the teens, one of them asked, so if we get a new youth pastor, are they going to have new jokes? Fair. It's fair. Okay, you can take it down. It's really bad. But wait, there's myrrh. Actually, what's interesting is one of the movies made, The Nativity, that is telling this story, it has, to me, a pretty almost heart-wrenching moment when the Magi make it to Jesus. So we know gold is typically given to kings. It is the thing, remember, because God told you a long time ago, guess what? He's just going to acquire wealth on you. And they're like, no, let's keep him. Excuse me. So they do, and shockingly, gold becomes a sign of wealth. Gold is what the kings have. It's often given to them. It's kind of like, you already have it, and you're getting more. It's like all the celebrities. They get all the free stuff, and it's like, you've got plenty of money. Just pay for it. But this is our world. This is where we're at. So gold is brought. We know that. And then frankincense, some of us have heard and know this. Frankincense is actually a resin. It is interesting because when it's gathered, some of its usage is anti-inflammatory. Now, we associate it with another usage, which is it's used as incense during prayer offerings to God, where the incense or the fragrance or the smoke rises to the Lord, and it's presented to go to the Lord. I find it very interesting that frankincense also is something that comes when a tree is wounded or stripped and is bleeding. And then that somehow became the healing property. Now, myrrh would be the same thing. And this is where the end of that movie gets me. The gold is presented, and there's still awe in it. In fact, the gold might have funded what Joseph and Mary needed to get out to save the child. And then we have frankincense, which is an offering to God that is to rise toward the heavenlies. The star that guided them there also makes sense. And in the movie, when the third gift comes out, there's a little bit of interaction between the wise men. You've done this when you've got good friends that you know stuff without saying it. In that culture, they could have known this without saying it. But myrrh is actually often used in an embalming or preparatory way for someone. And in the movie, the third magi, it's almost as if he doesn't know what to do. Seems like a strange baby shower gift. And he's looking at the others, and it's almost as if he's not knowing that he should do this. And then he lays it down, and there's this understanding of that's pretty big. The message in the myrrh. And they don't know how it's going to play out, right? I said at the beginning, sometimes we just don't get to see God's big picture, but we are on the other side of it, and we actually get to celebrate God's big picture, which is the light of the world has come. He is the King of all kings, who we really wanted all the time. But he's also the one who actually came to suffer and die for us. That he is the one who will be the ultimate sacrifice so that the light of the world will take away the sins of the world. We're going to have the worship team come up, and we're going to think about that tiny little king who is going to be the King of Kings, who goes out and actually goes before us, who fights for us, and today is still fighting for us. We're also going to remember that some journeys are quick, and they get to Jesus. They're ready, and they get the understanding. They have the aha moment. They have the encounter where they know who Jesus is, that he's the hope of the world. And then some, it just might take a little bit longer. And maybe, if we're real, there are times where we feel like we just went just all abandoned out. And there are other times where we just felt like we were so far off from God. But yet, Jesus is calling both the near and the far, even now. We're going to sing a song, and one of the first few lines says, "Man, I'd go to the mountains if I just knew that's where you were." And it really kind of has two meanings, right? God has gone to the deepest of depths in Jesus by leaving the heavenlies and coming to this broken world. But also, man, maybe we need to seek out after Jesus a little bit more because he is the king that we need. He is the ruler that will actually shepherd us. So I'm going to have you stand with us as we sing this song. We're going to just open up the altars again. And maybe some need to be refreshed in that encounter with Jesus. Maybe some want to come pray for somebody who seems a long way off, that Jesus will just beckon them, that his light will just shine and call them to. And then some of us might just want to come and praise God, to worship him for who he is. So will you join us as we sing? The altars are open.
Oh, how high would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you hide? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you grace the other side. And oh, how long have I chased rivers from lowly seas to where they rise, against the rush of grace descending from the source of its supply. 'Cause in the highlands and the heartache, neither more or less inclined, I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is, in the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, 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 how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend the path, from where your feet rest on the sunrise to where you sweep the sinners past. And oh, how fast would you come running if just a shadow me through the night? Trace my steps through all my failures and walk me out the other side. For who could dare ascend that mountain, that valley, hill called Calvary, but for the one I call Good Shepherd, who like a lamb was slain for me. I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows, no less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is, in the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, a mighty river flowing upward from a deep but empty grave.
We pray, Jesus, we are grateful that you are the one who rules. Lord, will you help us remember that when our situation is difficult, when the mountain is before us? May we remember that you are the one who created that mountain. Lord, that there is nothing that you cannot defeat, that you are actually fighting for us and you're calling us near. And so, Jesus, as we carry on, we are also grateful. You are our great shepherd. You are the one who will go before us and lead us to the things that we need, the things that sustain us. And then, Jesus, praise you with joy. We're grateful that you are leading us to the things that give us the truest life to the full. And so as we head out, Lord, may we rejoice in your birth. May we rejoice in the fact that you came to walk alongside with us, to carry us through. And then, Jesus, as we carry on, may we sense your spirit continuing to work in our lives and as we head out and interact with the people around us. Jesus, that we will not just receive grace, but we'll extend it as we interact this week. And then, Jesus, we just want to continue to be a people of worship who honor you for what you are. Lord, we want to be a people who remember that you are calling all of us, those that are near and those that might just take a longer journey. Jesus, will your light shine bigger than the crazy traffic, the frustrations, the stress, the disappointment, and the sorrow. May your light be what gives our hearts joy, even in the midst of something, even in the midst of death. Jesus, you are there. And so may we continue to be like the Magi, to head right toward you. And then, Jesus, as we do that, Lord, just continue to guide our steps. We call on you as the faithful God who will carry us through. And then we will continue to give you the praise. Amen. God is good.
All the time.
And all the time.
God is good.
You are dismissed.
Krisi, we did miss, Bob, you did a great job, but we had one more announcement that we had to add on, is on Monday we have chapel bells. And we're having our little Christmas party. Food will be provided. If you want to have a gift to exchange, you can do that. And we just hopefully will see you at 11 o'clock. We always have a great time. Thank you.